In September 2017, a pop star from Barbados walked into a room full of beauty industry veterans and showed them something they had spent decades ignoring. She had a foundation, but not just one. She had 40 of them, 40 shades covering every skin tone, every undertone, every person the beauty industry had collectively decided was not worth serving. In the first 40 days, Fenty Beauty generated $100 million. In its first full year, $570 million. Today, Rihanna is worth approximately $1.4 billion. She is the richest female musician in the world. But here's the fact most people miss. The music did not make her a billionaire. The business did, and understanding exactly how she built that business reveals one of the most sophisticated strategic decisions any celebrity has made in modern commercial history. Let's start with the opportunity. The global cosmetics market in 2017 was worth over $400 billion. The prestige segment, higher-end products sold through retailers like Sephora, was worth tens of billions on its own. The brands operating there had enormous budgets, decades of consumer trust, and sophisticated supply chains, and almost none of them could properly match what a woman with deeper skin actually needed. Most prestige foundation lines topped out at around 20 shades. The darkest options were formulated poorly, displayed as afterthoughts at the end of retail shelves, and barely featured in advertising. Women of color mixed products, adjusted with concealer, and accepted that the industry simply did not see them as a priority customer. The market for multicultural beauty in the United States alone was valued at over $8 billion in 2017. The gap was not invisible. The demand was not hidden. The data existed. The formulation technology existed. What did not exist was a decision from any major beauty company that this market was worth properly serving. Rihanna, who grew up in Barbados surrounded by skin tones the Western beauty industry barely acknowledged, did not see an act of charity. She saw a revenue opportunity that billion-dollar companies had left sitting on the table. But the more important question is not what she saw. It is how she structured the deal that turned that gap into a billion-dollar personal asset. Most celebrity beauty partnerships in 2017 worked like this. A famous person licensed their name to an existing manufacturer. They filmed advertisements, made appearances at launch events, collected a royalty of 3 to 8% on net sales, and hoped the brand survived long enough to matter. Rihanna looked at that structure and made a different choice. She negotiated a 50-50 joint venture with LVMH, the French luxury conglomerate that owns Louis Vuitton, Dior, Sephora, and dozens of the most valuable brands on earth, through LVMH's in-house beauty incubator, Kendo Brands. She was not licensing her name. She was not collecting a royalty. She was a co-owner with equal equity. That structural decision is the single most important business move she made, because a royalty deal and an equity deal look very different as the business grows. A 5% royalty on $600 million in annual revenue is $30 million per year. That makes you rich. A 50% ownership stake in a company generating $600 million annually, valued between $1 and $2 billion, makes you a billionaire. The difference between those two outcomes was not talent. It was not fame. It was one negotiation, structured correctly, before the brand ever existed. Now here is what LVMH brought to that partnership, because this is the part that made the global launch possible. Rihanna brought the creative vision, the cultural credibility, and the specific market insight that the gap was enormous. LVMH brought the manufacturing infrastructure, the formulation expertise, the supply chain, the capital, and most critically, the distribution. Because LVMH owns Sephora. Fenty Beauty launched simultaneously in 34 countries through Sephora on a single day. Not a slow rollout, not a test market. 34 countries on day one, through the most influential beauty retailer in the world. That is not something Rihanna could have built independently. No individual, regardless of their fame, has the capital or logistics to manufacture and distribute a beauty line globally overnight. But LVMH had the infrastructure already running. Rihanna had the insight and the trust. The partnership combined both. Now let's talk about what the launch actually did to the industry. Fenty Beauty launched during New York Fashion Week. The 40 shades were displayed in Sephora with the deepest tones, front and center. Not at the end of the shelf, not the afterthought, but the stated point. The advertising campaign featured women across every shade, prominently as the primary subjects, not diversity decoration in the corner of an image. The internet did the rest. Women who had never found their shade in a prestige product posted videos of themselves finding their match. Dark-skinned women who had spent years being told their skin tone was too specialized for mass retail found themselves in a mainstream campaign. The emotional response was not just enthusiasm, it was relief, and relief converts to loyalty at a level that advertising budgets cannot manufacture. Industry analysts called what happened next the Fenty Effect. Within months, brands that had claimed for years that a broader shade range was not commercially viable were scrambling to expand their offerings. CoverGirl launched 40 shades. Dior expanded its range. A 2019 study found that beauty brands offering 40 or more shades grew revenue 24% faster than those with limited ranges. Rihanna had not just launched a product. She had changed the operating assumptions of an entire industry and captured the market she created before anyone else could. By 2024, Fenty Beauty was generating over $600 million in annual revenue. It remained the top-earning celebrity beauty brand in the world, ahead of Kylie Cosmetics, ahead of Rare Beauty, ahead of every other celebrity who had tried to build in the same category. The business model is worth understanding clearly. Products are priced at $30 to $45 above drugstore, competitive with major prestige brands. Distribution runs through Sephora as the primary retail partner, the direct Fenty Beauty website where margins are highest, and international retailers across more than 50 countries. The brand does not spend heavily on conventional advertising because it does not need to. Rihanna herself is the marketing department. When she posts on social media, hundreds of millions of people see it, instantly at zero additional cost to the brand. That structural advantage, where the founder's audience eliminates a significant portion of customer acquisition cost, is the reason the economics of this business look so different from a traditional beauty company. But the story is not only about what worked. In 2019, Rihanna launched Fenty Maison, a full luxury fashion house, under LVMH, making her the first black woman to head an original brand with the conglomerate, but the business struggled immediately. The price points were steep. Items started at $250 and reached $2,000. That placed the brand in competition with Chanel and Saint Laurent, houses that had spent decades building the brand equity to justify those prices. Fenty Maison had not yet earned that comparison. The loyal customer who had bought $40 of foundation was not the same customer who could spend $2,000 on a jacket. Then the pandemic disrupted everything. A new luxury fashion house requiring hands-on creative oversight from a founder in Los Angeles, with production centered in Europe, became operationally impossible to run. By February 2021, Rihanna and LVMH jointly announced the suspension of Fenty Maison. The financial loss absorbed was approximately $36 million. But here's what that moment reveals about how Rihanna actually operates. On the exact same day the Fenty Maison closure was announced, Savage X Fenty, her lingerie brand launched in 2018, raised $115 million in new funding, pushing its valuation past $1 billion. She did not collapse the broader Fenty ecosystem to save a failing venture. She shut down what was not working, protected the profitable businesses, and accelerated what was growing. The fashion house failure, painful as it was, demonstrated a discipline that separates good operators from bad ones, knowing when to stop. And now, the Fenty story is entering its next chapter. In late 2025, Reuters reported that LVMH had begun exploring a potential sale of its 50% stake in Fenty Beauty. The reported valuation was between $1 and $2 billion, down from a peak estimate near $2.8 billion in 2021, reflecting broader pressures on the beauty market. If LVMH completes a sale, Rihanna may have the opportunity to acquire majority or full ownership of the brand she built from a gap nobody else wanted to fill. So what can someone without Rihanna's fame and platform actually take from this? The first lesson is about equity versus royalty. The most important decision Rihanna made was structural, not creative. She chose ownership over a licensing fee. That single choice multiplied her eventual wealth by an order of magnitude. Every entrepreneur should ask not just what they will earn from a deal, but what percentage of the company they will own when the business matures. The second lesson is about underserved markets. Rihanna did not create a better version of what already existed. She served customers nobody was properly serving, and those customers rewarded her with loyalty that advertising cannot buy. The most valuable market opportunities are often hiding inside existing industries, inside the gap between what customers need and what the industry has decided is worth building for them. The third lesson is about choosing partners who bring what you cannot build. Rihanna had cultural credibility and market insight. LVMH had manufacturing, supply chain, and global distribution. Neither could have built Fenty Beauty alone. The partnership worked because each party contributed something genuinely irreplaceable, and equal ownership aligned both parties' incentives to make it succeed. The fourth lesson is about authenticity as a business asset. Fenty Beauty worked not because Rihanna marketed inclusivity. It worked because the product was genuinely good, the shade range was genuinely comprehensive, and the marketing genuinely featured the customers it claimed to serve. Consumers who had been ignored for decades were exceptionally good at distinguishing real commitment from performative messaging. The brands that mimicked the shade count without matching the formulation or the authenticity did not capture the same loyalty. And the fifth lesson is about knowing when to close what is not working. Most people running a business will never face a decision as public as shutting down a historic fashion house that carries their name, but the principle applies everywhere. The worst use of capital and attention is defending a venture the market has already rejected. Rihanna absorbed the loss, protected the profitable brands, and kept moving. Here is the answer to the question this video opened with. How did Rihanna build a $1.4 billion fortune without relying on music? She identified a market gap that billion-dollar companies had chosen to ignore. She structured a partnership that gave her ownership instead of a royalty. She used LVMH's infrastructure to reach 34 countries on day one. She built a product that was genuinely good for customers who had been underserved for decades. And before any of that existed, before the revenue, before the shelves, before the shade match videos went viral, she made one decision that separated her outcome from every other celebrity who had tried something similar. She insisted on owning half of what she was building. The music made her famous. The ownership structure made her a billionaire. And that distinction between lending your name and actually owning what you build is the gap that separates a successful celebrity from a genuinely successful business person.